Okay.
Hey, Becky Anderson. Hello.
Hey, Susan Elizabeth Phillips. Hello. How are you?
Okay, this
Good.
is my deal now. You do a lot of author interviews, but now you are subject to my relentless interrogation.
Ooh,
I'm in
ooh.
control here. Are you ready?
Yes, I think so.
So, for those of you who don't know, Becky Anderson is one of the most powerful booksellers in the United States. She is the face of Anderson's Bookshop in Naperville, Illinois, which is my hometown bookstore, even though I've got palm trees behind me. That is my hometown. Becky was Bookseller of the Year in, my notes say, 2011, past president of the American Booksellers Association. Everybody in publishing knows Becky and knows Anderson's shop. I want to talk about the history of the bookshop, but first, I was thinking I was thinking about some of the really famous people who've been to Anderson's and done signings there. I mean, J.K. Rowling, you got her early, right?
Right. We got her before anybody knew the book. We were reading those advanced readers so early and hopping on that book before anybody knew it. And she came to the store and we had to bring in a group of school kids. And it was during the day. And so they were driven from school, and we might have had 70 to 80 people total, including J.K. Rowling. And she sat there and talked to these kids. And can you imagine being one of those kids today, to know that you were there before Harry Potter was anything? And,
yeah.
But then she came back 2 books later, and we had the event at Naperville Central High School, and over 5,000 people showed up for that event. So in just that short period of time, but we knew it was something special, and our booksellers were on that book like glue when all of us read it. So yeah, it was exciting.
This is something about Anderson's is the booksellers there read. They read and recommend. And I have been to a couple social occasions with some of your booksellers. They are so obnoxious. The minute you sit there, I just get such a kick out of it. If there's something they're enthusiastic about, they don't care what the subject is, what's going on. They sit there and they tell you about how wonderful this book is. I mean, that's a rare thing, Becky.
Yeah, it's like a contagious disease, but a really good one that we can't help ourselves. That, and it's what's we're missing right now, and it's getting better. But doing that in person, seeing that person face to face, but just grabbing somebody and telling about something you read that you absolutely adore and love. So yeah, that's the key. That's the key.
Hold on, my notes just went on the floor. This is what happens when you do them outside, but I like to do the interview outside because the light is so flattering. Take 10 years off my face.
And you do look lovely.
All right. Let's see. Did you have Stephen King there?
We had Stephen King. We did that at North Central College. I think we had, over 15 or 1,600 people. We had to use their big recreation building. And we had Bernie Sanders there too. We had Bernie Sanders at the Paramount in Aurora.
I remember that.
Yeah.
You've had, I think you've had John Grisham there.
Yep. Several times. Yeah.
And I remember, you had George W. Bush there. And I remember the store was in kind of a tizzy because you had the Secret Service people there setting up for that.
Oh, we had the Secret Service everywhere, and they made several, before the event kind of trips to make sure that everything was secure and everything. But they closed off a lot more streets than they said they were going to. So there were some people that weren't happy about that. But it was interesting. But the line, it was freezing cold. It was probably in the teens. And we were passing out hand warmers because they would only let into the store just a few people at a time. So the line went all the way around the block. It was insane. But yeah. So we've had the Secret Service on several occasions for different events. So
I can't remember. Is George Bush, was he the only president or past president you had there? Did you ever have Jimmy Carter or anybody like that?
No, we've not had Jimmy Carter. I wish, but no, not Jimmy Carter. It would have been wonderful to have him. So yeah, we're hoping on Barack and Michelle. We want them to come for sure. So
no kidding. That would be great.
Yeah.
So the history of the Anderson family and Anderson's Bookshop is really interesting. And I know what the history is, but why don't you tell us how the store got started? Because I think this is so cool.
Okay, so the story begins in 1875. So we're talking, what, 120?
Long time
Oh,
ago.
yeah, a long time ago. So 130 something years ago. Our great-great-grandfather came from Pennsylvania, and his name was William Wallace Wickel, and he started a pharmacy right on Jefferson Avenue in Naperville. And it was that kind of a drugstore where you sold everything, including books. So he would have ads like in the local paper, or he would put it into like the women's, there was a women's club at that time. And we have a cookbook that they printed out in 1883, and it has an ad from him in there. And it goes, W.W. Wickel, druggist and bookseller, the finest goods sold in a drugstore, beautiful wallpaper. So the thing is, he sold everything. That was like a general store, but it was also a pharmacy, but books. So back then we sold the books to the local schools and those types of books that people read at the time. So you could come in and get your drugs and your books at the same time. And the store grew because it passed down to his son-in-law, and that was Louis Oswald, which we still have our pharmacy in Naperville. So it's celebrating a very long time. My nephew now is the proprietor and owner of that store, Alex.
Hold on a minute. Fifth generation at Oswald's Pharmacy, I think, which
Right.
may be the longest time a pharmacy has been in one family.
Right. So it's Alex is the sixth.
Yep.
And my son is in the book parts of the family business. And so he's the sixth generation in the book part. So yeah.
I don't think I've met him, Becky. I've met a lot of your nieces and nephews, but I've met him. So I got to get to know him.
Well, he's the manager over at our Downers Grove store. So
okay.
he's usually over there. But it was funny the way we became part of our community. And we sold wallpaper, but we actually would hang the wallpaper for customers. So we've changed a lot. So, but it was my grandfather who was a voracious reader. And up till the time he was in his mid 90s, he was reading 8 or 9 books a week, but he always dreamed of opening a bookstore. So in 1964, he opened a bookstore above the pharmacy on Jefferson Avenue. And you have to walk up a long flight of stairs, and he named it Paperback Paradise. It was above the drugstore. So sort of like paradise above. And back then he just started selling paperbacks, but it wasn't long after that we sold a lot of hardcovers. And we had even started doing author events back then. And I remember when I was really little, Fergie Jenkins from the Cubs, the pitcher, came and did a signing, his first book, and he was still playing for the Cubs. And it was about maybe 7 or 8 years ago, he came back for an event, and I showed him a picture, a black and white picture. And this time he's now bald. Back then he had a wonderful head of hair. So he just laughed his head off. But it just shows you how things change and how they stay the same in a lot of ways.
Well, you have a family of readers. When did you open the current store? The current store is right in the middle of downtown Naperville. It's a community hangout. It's a large size store, and then there's a toy store, Anderson's Toy Shop, very close. So when did that store open?
Well, when it opened above the pharmacy, and then we moved down the street and we enlarged, and we probably have enlarged 3 or 4 times now now to the current size. We moved down the street because it was too small. That store up above. We changed the name because a lot of people either thought we were a religious bookstore because of the name Paradise, or they thought we were an adult bookstore. So we changed it and moved it down the street, dropped the Paradise name. And then when my parents bought the business from my grandparents, we changed it to Anderson's Bookshop. Yeah.
We moved to Naperville in 1987, and you were in that current store at that point.
Yes, right. Yeah, we were. And I don't think we had enlarged for the last time, or we had done a big remodeling. It was after that, but yeah, it was in that location. Yeah.
I remember one of the things that's interesting is we hear a lot about saving our independent bookstores. And I think I've mentioned this before. I have had, now how do I say this tactfully? I've had issues with a lot of independent bookstores because they're, whining about losing business, but yet they don't have a romance section, for example.
Which I don't understand. Yeah.
I know they're snobbish about it. And so when you go into Anderson's, now Anderson's has every kind of literature there is. It feels like a really first-class bookstore. There's also a big romance section. And not only that, there are clerks there who read romance and recommend books. And that to me, I mean, that's why I've been such a supporter of the store. If you were one of those elite indies, I would be nice to you, but I wouldn't care about the store in my heart like I do. I love that. I love
Well,
that.
and the thing is, when we have authors, I mean, we are so proud to have you as one of our local Naperville authors, and we love doing events with romance authors. Absolutely love it, because there is no audience like romance readers. They sit down at an event and they are like instant friends. It's just, it's an incredible community of readers. And that's why we enjoy hosting romance authors. And that section has grown. It's even bigger now. I mean, we just expanded it just not too long ago, because it's a genre that's in great demand. And there's some wonderful, wonderful pieces of literature being written, and people should not dismiss it. And I have always been out there preaching that message, because I think independent bookstores are crazy if they do not have a great romance section.
I agree. And one of the things I've noticed at my signings is they'll buy my book, they'll buy another romance author book, and then they'll buy a book that's completely off the wall. It's not romance genre. It's something that the person sitting next to them has recommended.
Yeah.
And that's really, really, really special. How do you see the role of independent bookstores in a community?
You know what? I think it's a key. I mean, it's just like any community. Every community needs a great library, but every community needs a great bookstore as well. You know, it's different than when you walk into our doors, we welcome everyone. You know, you're home, it's family, you know, and that's the way we've always been, a family business, where we feel that our employees are family, and we want to treat them like family, and we want to treat our customers, but only we want to treat our community as family. Yep. And I think that's the difference, because when people walk in that door, you want to share, you want to get face to face and talk about books and literature, and we want people to feel comfortable. And also, as a community, we support our local schools. We place hundreds of authors every year into local schools all over the Chicagoland area, not just Naperville. Yep. And we try and support all sorts of not-for-profits and charities by doing lots of different activities. And I think you just do that. You give back to your community. But I think if you don't do that, you can't expect it to come in your door if you don't become an integral part of what a community is all about.
And that's one thing I love about Anderson's Bookshop, and that I love about the Anderson family, is you have a family of givers who are really active in the community and doing great things. I think that's really great. Yeah. So you always loved to read. What books influenced you as a kid?
You know what? I remember in elementary school, I used to love to read sports biographies, but I read all the Little House books. I read all sorts of history books. I loved that series of You Were There with Washington when he crossed the Delaware. There was a whole history series. So I loved history too, but I also loved, one of my favorite books as a child was a book called The Wolfling. And it was Sterling North. If people remember the book Rascal, he wrote a book about a boy who had raised a wolf from a pup into an adult. And it takes place in Wisconsin. I love those types of books with nature and all that involved. And I think it was growing up in a family where I remember my grandfather reading us The Wizard of Oz and Pinocchio and Treasure Island, and my mother reading poetry to us. I can still recite some of those poems she read to us. I think all of that is so important that you grow up with it. And we know that kids, if you keep kids reading, you know, through 6th grade, say, they'll come back to reading if they leave it. Because when you get into high school and college, you kind of drop off of reading. But I think it wasn't something that we had to do. We just grew up with it and we were exposed to it. And that's, I think, so important. And as I get older, I appreciate what I had as a child so much. And it wasn't because my grandparents owned a bookshop. It was natural because we were read to all the time. We talked about books. Mm-hmm. And so
your children's section is just an amazing children's section. I'm guessing, I might be wrong, I'm guessing that is probably the most profitable section. I mean, where you're selling the most books in children's as opposed to other, or did I make that up?
Well, it's, I would say it's close to 50-50, but the thing is, what we really concentrate on is we think it's really important. We have decades and decades of experience with the people who run and work in our children's sections, because we work with educators all the time in schools. And I think they know when they come to an event at our store, they're going to learn something great. They're going to learn to, whether it's a picture book or a middle grade book, or even a YA or piece of nonfiction, they're going to know that right book that they can have in their classroom and share with their own students. So it's always been a huge educational connection, but it's always just having that pulse on what we think is great literature for children, but also what kids in our area want to read. And it is a big part of our business. Absolutely. And we have a separate company, and we named it after our great-great-grandfather. When we started, it was W.W. Wickle Company, but people got the name wrong. Either it was Wicked or Winkle or Pickle or whatever. So we changed it to ABC Fairs. And we've been doing book fairs for probably close to 40 years now in schools all over Northern Illinois. And we do a lot of educational conferences and shows around the country. That's when we could get out there.
Right.
But it's just been a huge part of how we get great books out to a lot of kids in Northern Illinois, and to teachers who are just asking for those curated lists that they need to have in their classrooms.
Yeah. Well, this is this is kind of gossip, behind the scenes gossip. But I don't remember, maybe it was 10 years ago, when all of a sudden I went into Anderson's and I'm talking to some of my friends in there, and there are long faces because a Barnes and Noble is going in a block and a half, 2 blocks away.
Right.
And the idea was Anderson's was over.
Yeah.
It didn't happen.
Well, it's about 25 years now. Do you believe it?
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, Tempus Fugit.
Yeah.
I sell a lot of books with Barnes and Noble. I'm very happy with them, but
Sure.
it's so fascinating seeing that store come in and Anderson's. And I feel like, I could be wrong, but I feel like there's been even created even more energy for book selling, because you guys came out of that really, really well, because things you can do that Anderson's can't in terms of or that Barnes and Noble can't in terms of hand-to-hand selling.
Yeah, and the typical scenario back then, when Barnes and Noble and Borders were battling each other, was that if you had a big superstore open next to an independent, either you'd go out of business or you would lose most of your sales. Well, for us, we had an 8% increase that year.
Isn't that funny? Well,
because I was determined that our customers couldn't forget us, and that we did some special things to remind people that we are here. We're your local bookstore. We are run and owned, and people who work in our stores live in your community. So, when you buy it here, you're going to keep us here. So that was a big message.
There was a real, poor Barnes and Noble. I actually think they should have chosen another location, because when they came in, the bookstore is so central to the people of Naperville. Naperville's a well-educated community, and they wanted to make sure that Anderson's survived. So how did the pandemic, I hate to bring it up, how did this change? How did Anderson's deal with this? This was just really traumatic. I was just talking to my friend Jane Ann Krentz was just talking to Barbara Peters at Poison Pen Bookstore, and I listened to some of the things she had to say about how the pandemic had changed book selling at Poison Pen. So what happened with Anderson's?
You know what? I think for us, it was one of those things where it shifted so quickly. When the lockdown occurred at the end of March of last year, we had to convert to curbside pickups, or we had to convert to online. And we were selling books online, but it wasn't anything like this. So it was everyone on board. Everyone wearing masks. We sanitized everything at that time. And we had key employees who stuck around when they knew that this virus was spreading. And we all were very careful about what we did. But we learned that we could convert to doing online sales, but also servicing our customers by providing them with books and all sorts of things. We sold so many puzzles. It was insane.
Oh,
but what it did is it made us learn that we needed to up our game when it comes to internet sales, but also how we communicate digitally and with social media. But some of these practices that we learned during that time, we've kept them in practice now, even though we're open to the public. And we were the first day we could. A lot of independent stores around the country decided to wait and not to open. but I was determined at the end of May that we were going to open. So we made sure our store was safe. We changed our traffic patterns. We put up all sorts of protections, not only, especially for our employees, but for our customers. And we opened, and it was a joyous day when we could see everybody again. And
Yeah,
everybody would say that
was.
too. But it was
Yeah.
hard. We had a big drop in business.
Oh.
And it was really hard for our company, our wholesale company, where we do all that school business, because we couldn't get into the schools at all. So moving to virtual book fairs just doesn't pan out, because the sales, and probably know this too, doing a virtual event doesn't sell like it does when you do an in-person.
No, you know, at an in-person event, you could, some of your events, you sell over 1,000 books, and at a, virtually, you might probably sell 70 or 80.
Yeah, exactly. You got that right on. Yep.
Yeah.
It's just, people we miss each other. It's like when you go to a movie, you love to hear it. It's that feeling of people sitting around you and their reactions to watching a film. It's even more so when you're talking to an author, you're talking about books, you're talking about anything, but it's just that point of sharing and being together that virtual just doesn't do it.
Oh boy, I got to talk about the time I used my, the fact that I'm friends with all of you. So this was a number of years ago. Rick Riordan was coming. He's the famous author of the Percy Jackson series, right? And my grandson at that point, I call him Thor. That's his public name. Thor was so into those books. I mean, he was in elementary school, and I went to my friends at Anderson. I'm saying, do you need any help at this signing? Because it was going to be offsite. It was going to be at Downers Grove in the Tivoli Theater.
Tivoli Theater, right?
And they said yes. So when it came to that signing, Thor and I got there early, and we helped stack books. And then we did this thing where he's signing 1,000 books, basically his initials to ours, right? So he's sitting at the table signing, and I'm handing the books to Thor open, and Thor's handing him, and we did that for 1,000 books, and then Thor got his picture with him. That whole event is stamped on my memory, not just because of that wonderful experience for my grandson, but we went into the auditorium early, right before the doors opened for the crowd. So Riordan is backstage, and Thor and I are sitting there toward the front. The doors open, and this rush of teenagers come in, and they are squealing like they're going to see a rock star.
Yeah.
And that was just, I started to cry. Yeah. It was just so moving. So for those of you out there who don't know Rick Riordan's book, great books for middle school readers, great books for, girls read them, but lots of girls were there, but it's also great to hook boys.
Yeah. Right. No, and it's a great way, a fun way, and a really interesting way to learn about, Greek mythology. Yeah. It's wonderful. Yeah.
The other inside story I'm going to tell is I just love having friends in this bookstore, because there is a hidden area underneath the bookstore. You go in the back, and regular customers are not allowed to do this, but I am. You walk down these metal stairs into the bowels of Anderson's bookshop. It's a basement area. It's rough and raw. Shelves and shelves and shelves of books and desks. And the bad thing is, Becky, every time I go down there, my friends are down there, your staff, start talking to them. And what I really want to do is leave me alone. Let me just walk and peek through all of these shelves. It's like a magical place. I love your basement.
Oh, well, it was funny. It was at a book expo, and it was at the Bookselling, the Indie Awards for the luncheon. And Tom Lichtenheld, who is an Illinois illustrator, he does fabulous, just incredible illustrations for a lot of picture books. He won one of the awards, and he stood up and he said, "Oh yeah, and I love going down in Anderson's dusty basement and signing lots of books."
I know, it's just so fun down there. It's so fun.
Well, I call it the crypt, so I just mentioned it up. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about what you think will be hot books for Christmas, what you're recommending maybe for kids or adults. What are you seeing now?
Well, it's, we're selling books across the board. It's really interesting. People want some great reads. There are a lot of music biographies or books written by musicians that are out right now.
Dave Grohl's new book is out, I know.
Oh, we sold so many, and he decided to sign books after the fact. We could have sold so many of those signed books by Dave Grohl. It was just, but we're still selling it, whether they're signed or not. There's it's $100 book, but it's all of Paul McCartney's lyrics with beautiful photography, and it's slip cased, and it's called The Lyrics. So it's all of his stuff from 1956 to the present, of all the songs that he wrote on his own or with the Beatles. And people love that. So Beatles books, along with the new Peter Jackson films that are out about their last concert, we're selling lots of Beatles books. So we're just seeing a lot of those music biographies that are just selling really, really well. And then on, with some of the nonfiction, Brene Brown's new book just came out, and it's called Atlas of the Heart. And she is fascinating to listen to, because you can always bring something into your soul that you can use in your own life, but also at work and what you do every day. Yeah. So we just had a virtual event with her, but that book is absolutely wonderful. So that's another big one. And then the 1619 Project came out, about the whole thing about, slavery in the United States and when it began, and the ramifications it's had on our history and the people who live in this country. But I think that's some of the great nonfiction, and some of my favorite fiction. One of the books is called Cloud Cuckoo Land. And that's
I've heard of this. I haven't read it. Is it really?
This book is for any reader, because what it does, it talks about how we need to preserve the written word and books, and what people do over the centuries, because it starts in like 15th century Constantinople. And it goes all the way, it goes back and forth between different time periods with 5 different characters, all talking about one story. And it's just incredible. And to me, when I finished it, I go, it just makes me appreciate books and the people who write them, and how we need to preserve them and keep them in libraries and on bookstore shelves. So I thought it was just an awesome book. And he wrote, of course.
Okay. I'll try that one, because I've seen it on lists. I thought, I don't know if I'll like it. It sounds like it might be boring.
Oh, I didn't find it boring at all. I thought it was awesome.
Okay.
But, yeah, and then so that one was just incredible. And then Amor Towles, who wrote The Gentleman in Moscow.
I read Lincoln Highway just recently.
Yeah. So we'll have to talk about the ending sometime. So. Okay.
Yeah, that was an odd ending. I think the ending on that book worked, but that book is I talked about it on my Facebook page. It's with Towles books, they're not fast moving particularly, but they're really rich in character and in language. Yes. And Lincoln Highway is like that, really endearing characters.
Yeah. And another book that I love, but I've loved all of his books, is The Harlem Shuffle by Colson Whitehead. And the book takes place in 60s in Harlem. But it also has a mystery as an underlying storyline, which makes it that much. But I mean, the 60s in Harlem was such a rich cultural place.
Right.
So that's absolutely fantastic. And then my husband absolutely adores this series, and I've only read one, but I've read some of his standalone books. Is William Kent Krueger, who writes the Cork O'Connor mysteries. They're he's a detective up in Minnesota, but he's written a prequel to the series called Lightning Strike. And this is about him as a boy and what happened in his community. And it kind of gives you a sneak peek into why he became a detective. So a really interesting book. And then, of course, Louise Erdrich's new book, The Sentence, is just out. So loved everything that she's ever written. And then one book I liked, and some people have liked it as much as I think it's either you like it or you don't. But
right.
This is Lauren Groff's new one. It's called Matrix. And the reason I love this book, this is like 12th century feminism at its best. And it's based on a true woman who lived back in the 12th century France. And then she was in England because she came an abbess at a convent. But her name was Marie de France. And she knew Eleanor of Aquitaine, who became Queen of England. They were cousins. And it's about how Eleanor of Aquitaine wanted to get rid of her cousin in a way. So she made her go to England and live in a convent. But she became the abbess and did so much for the women in this convent. And these women, you've never met such strong, interesting women. But they fought off some of the men in their community just to do what they did. And it was it was just an incredible feministic book.
That
Long
sounds like a
before.
great book club book too.
Yeah, it's a great one. It's called The Matrix, just Matrix, not the Mr. Anderson one, but
Right,
this is there. It's really great. And then one book that's out in paperback, which I thought was just a really interesting book because she based it on a true story that happened in Illinois. If you remember Dixon, Illinois, where the woman who was the city clerk absconded with millions and millions and millions of dollars, and she ended up having horse farms and all this kind of stuff. Well, she based this story, it's called The Talented Miss Farwell, and it's out in paperback. And it's just a fascinating story about a young girl that everybody loves her. But what she does is a small town, and she bases it in Illinois, but it's sort of a fictional town up in northern Illinois. But it's based on sort of the same thing, but I'm not going to say anymore because it's so good. It's so
And the
good.
name of that one again is what?
The Talented Miss Farwell.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you have for kids? A couple of days ago, I interviewed my friend Michael P. Spradlin, and
Yeah,
he's just a great guy.
he is a great guy.
He is the book that he's really excited about that doesn't have anything to it's not one of his books, but it's a children's book, is The Barn at Night. I don't know if you've seen this book yet. He is just crazy about this book. It's like for 3 to 5 year olds or something.
Right. Yeah.
Are so good. So we've talked about that one. What else do you have in mind for the kids?
Well, there's a series of books because these are the, I always enjoyed, and I enjoyed reading my kids when they were young too, or even when I talk to teachers, are books that make the adult laugh as much as the child, but maybe on a different level. And there's a series of books they're calling them the food group books.
Yeah.
And the first one that came out was called The Bad Seed, a picture book. And it's wonderful play on words about this seed who's just a bad seed. He was a really bad seed. But it's just so funny, and what ends it through the picture book. But the illustrations are just fabulous. And these are all written by Jory John, who just writes the funniest picture books. But then he wrote one called The Good Egg. So the good egg's always good, but didn't fit in with the other eggs in the dozen, and all that stuff. So there are all these play on words. There's a couch potato, there's the cool bean, and then the newest one is the smart cookie.
Is this, what age group is this?
This would be great for 4 and up. Yeah.
4 and up. And who's the author again?
Jory John.
Jory John.
They're
Okay,
they're fabulous. And then the other one that I absolutely love, because it's a great read aloud because the rhyme and just it's musical when you read it, is Amanda Gorman's picture book called Change Sings.
Oh.
And Lauren Long did the illustrations, one of my favorite illustrators. And it is a beautiful book about this boy and the girl, how they want change, but they want it to sing, and everyone, they get their neighborhood involved, and they're playing music, and it's just a celebratory book. It's really beautiful, really beautiful.
And that's Amanda Gorman, and it's called what?
Sings.
Change Sings. And what's the age group for that?
That one would be great for 4 and up, 3 and up. Yeah, because that one has I love the rhyming of the text, but it's almost like a song. So it's great to read to any child, I think, and even for adults, because I loved it.
Yeah.
And then Andrea Beatty, she's another one of our Naperville author celebrities like you. Her newest book in her series is Aaron Slater Illustrator. So she wrote the book Ada Twist Scientist, and that's now a Netflix TV show. And she had an Ada Twist balloon in the Macy's Day Parade this year.
Oh,
but this one is picture books she writes are about different kids from this one classroom, and all of them have sort of a STEM sort of connection. A lot of them do. But this one is just great because it's one of the boys who he didn't like to read so much, but he loved to draw. And so it's just these different stories about these different kids. And it's just a wonderful series of picture books. And then also there's some more early chapter into middle grade books that go along with those series of picture books. So I think they're fabulous. Yeah.
Good recommendations. Those are really great. Well, I think we're kind of getting to the end of our time, but before we log off, I have to tell everybody about what happened on, let me see, what was the date exactly? Summer of 2007, when Anderson's Bookshop brought the city of Naperville to a lovely standstill. Do you know what I'm talking about? Can you remember? 2007 summer, a very important
Harry Potter
book
party.
Yes, this
The party that shall not be named.
the party that shall not be named and that closed off the downtown to all traffic.
Yeah.
So have you ever heard of this, you guys? Have you ever heard of a bookstore being able to basically take over the downtown? This is what happened. Anderson's decided it was going to be the launch for Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, the last Harry Potter book. So Anderson spearheaded this event where they shut off our main downtown street. And everybody came to the Harry Potter party. All the teenagers, they were wearing the house colors. There was a tent set up. There was live music, and all the vendors, somehow you guys at Anderson's got all the vendors to come out and offer Harry Potter themed like food specials. There are a lot of restaurants on there along the sidewalk. It was my all-time favorite public event in Naperville ever. Do you remember all that?
Oh my gosh. Well, we did it the year before too, for the 6th book in the series. And then we did it again when the Half-Blood Prince came out, that book after the original series. But it was one of those things where we always celebrated every Harry Potter book when it came out. We would have a midnight release party ourselves.
Right.
But then I
Kids
decided,
were
why
jumping
can't
in
we?
pajamas. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And I said, why don't we do it for the whole town? So everyone got involved. We had entertainment on that stage on that. And we had a guy bringing raptors, owls and stuff for demonstrations, showing these live owls to all these kids. We had the costume contest. I had the carillon. Tim Sleep, who's the major carillioner for the city of Naperville, he was playing music, Harry Potter music on the carillon. And then he had a calliope and played that in front of the store, played all this Harry Potter music. We had so much stuff going on, and all the different merchants were doing different things. And like you said, the restaurants, it was just a big party to celebrate a book.
It was magical. And it wasn't just, I mean, all the teenagers were there. All the families were there. Little kids were there. All my neighbors were there. Adults, there were many adults there without children, including me. It was just a joyous celebration of books.
Yeah.
That was such a
and they had to keep closing down streets because there were too many people. I think for that last event with the 7th book, they estimated there were almost 70,000 people downtown Naperville.
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay. Well, you know what? When my next book comes out, I want the whole downtown closed.
Okay, we'll do it. We'll do it.
Becky, this has just been lovely. I'm so glad I had a chance to talk to you. And I'm just so glad it's not just celebrating the store, but it's celebrating your vision for the store and the community. And we are just all of us, not just in Naperville, but all of the other communities that Anderson's Bookshop has affected in some way. We're just so grateful for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And we couldn't do what we do without authors like you, and especially with our hometown author who is, we couldn't ask for more support than we get from you.
You've got it from everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks again. I love talking with you. See you when I get back.
Okay. Have fun out there. All right. Thanks.
Bye-bye.